I Yeah, no no kidding. Just happens to be gateway backwards, it's interesting. Um, here's the deal, I have, the Discord window, on oh my god, for real, okay. I've got the, Discord window up in the top. If we have moderator team, if there are any questions, I might not, be able to see them immediately, and I apologize for that. But, that's kind of the situation. Um, for those of you recording, can you give me a, indication that you are recording at the moment? Cool, Scotch tape. I am going to say these numbers along as I highlight them on my screen. Hopefully, this helps you with synchronizing audio. Um, gotcha. I'll still do the sync just in case, like, later on, it's like, "Why is this weird?" But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We did it. Congratulations. So, um, my name is Jared Bailey. I am known in the community as JleeBly. You may have seen me in other baseball adjacent communities such as Baseball, which is kind of where I really started to jump into all this stuff. I was the announcer or the broadcaster for the Charleston Shoe Thieves. I ran a Twitch channel called WSHU Baseball, coming at you live from yes, who's kicks? Let's go. Um, but I was a broadcaster for the Charleston Shoe Thieves, and Baseball was very interesting because that was really my first deep dive into baseball. And one thing that really attracted me to baseball and the community was that there was a large community of like statisticians and looking at charts and numbers and stuff like that. And I've always been fascinated with how things work, and I've always been very numbers minded. And I'll kind of get into a little bit more of that. But I believe one of the questions that had been asked, if I recall correctly, was what got me interested in spreadsheets. And basically, when I was a kid, you know, I just turned 40 recently. So I'm kind of a Zennial. And, when your first computer that you played with was like Windows 3.1, there were only so many programs on there, and you just kind of explore everything. And I remember like the spreadsheet program, which was probably Excel back in, the early 90s. It was just kind of fascinating that there was this program where you could just put like these tables and data and stuff like that. And I'd always been interested in tables and organizing data and all that stuff, even at a young age. Something about organizing that into a readable and digestible fashion was always kind of cool to me. Um, so I really didn't know much about how spreadsheets worked until high school. I had like a computer science class in my freshman year, and in that class for like half a year, it was basically a deep dive into things like Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel, and a little bit of like a PowerPoint and stuff like that too, because PowerPoint hadn't quite popped off until like the early aughts. So like I was in high school when PowerPoint was like really becoming cutting edge stuff. And I learned more about spreadsheets and calculations and all that stuff. And as I went through high school, there were different projects I had to do, and I learned more and more. And when I got to college and had different hobbies, I learned more and more. And I took a statistics class in college, and I learned more and more. And I some of the hobbies that I was doing, just learned more and more. I did pharmacy school and was able to use Excel to come up with tools to help with some of the more complex pharmacokinetic calculations that we had to do on a regular basis. Basically, be able to use a spreadsheet and common formulas to be able to plug in numbers and output results that we needed. Um, in my current position, so most of you might know that I am a director of pharmacy operations for a set of local federally qualified health centers. And some of my responsibilities have to do with managing inventories, both the physical inventory as well as like the financial inventory, handling financials. I've got 5 pharmacies under my umbrella right now, and being able to see what inventory and usage and all this stuff. And I have had a lot of practical applications for these spreadsheets. And what I found is that the more work I do on the fun stuff that I like to do, so things like dead ball, things like fantasy baseball, um, just weird stuff that I have these random ideas for, it can translate into work, and it helps me do my work a whole lot better. And these things kind of go hand in hand. So, um, my experience with Microsoft Excel has just been almost like a 2-decade journey. This is not something I learned overnight. This is not a specific class I took, videos, anything like that. Just a desire to kind of problem solve, work with it. If I encounter a problem, try to find the solution for it. And, every time I do a Google search, or try to solve a problem, I learn a new formula. I learn a bit more problem solving. It just kind of builds on itself. But I started simple, and I have found that with a software like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets for that matter, I am not the first person to run into these problems, and the answers are pretty well documented. So, my advice is to just like plug along. You will learn good. Data stewardship and how to make things a little bit easier for you in the future. And I'll kind of go into some of this problem solving as I show you some of the dead ball related projects that I have worked with. So to start, I just have like this the front page for a WM Acres um, website right here. It was more interesting than a white grid at the moment. But the first thing I want to show you is this sheet was entitled Dr. J's Dead Ball Draft Showdown, and this was a combination of different projects. So what you're seeing right here was I had this idea that I wanted to be able to generate a full team of players as quickly as possible. Um, So what this sheet does, this particular sheet, actually, I can go ahead and hit the getting started here that kind of talks a little bit more about that. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this link, and I'm going to put it in chat. So restricted. That's only people with access. Ha ha ha. That ain't going to do anything. Let's try this link right here. So this right here will let you view it, and you are more than welcome to hit file and make a copy for yourself if this is something you like. But the getting started tab will tell you exactly what's going on. But this team generator right here, every time I refresh, you will notice that it creates a brand new team for me to copy and paste elsewhere. So if I want to generate a league of 16 teams, it would probably only take me about 2 or 3 minutes based off this. The age is based off of the rules that are in second edition. These positions, I try to ensure that every team is balanced. These jerseys are kind of based off of sort of some old school rules about jersey assignment. This is rolling left, right, or switch, rolling BTs, OBTs, rolling traits, rolling salary based off of the masters of the game. And then this right here is finding a random birthplace for players. Like I said, I can refresh this, I can copy and paste it, and I can generate a team pretty quickly. And I can use the salary value down here to get an idea of whether or not they're kind of balanced. So if I know I want teams between the 150 and the 175 million range, I can just keep refreshing until I get something there and be able to do that. Um, a lot of what makes this work are helper tables. These are basically just iterations of what we see in second edition. Um, there are some tables right here that I take advantage of the random function to randomly select like jersey numbers to be able to assign people. So here, for example, are possible fielder jerseys, and here, for example, are possible pitcher jerseys. Right here, I created a table for nations, and I believe what I did was I took a look at some of the most recent seasons in the MLB and determined what their home country was. And based off this, we can actually weight um, these countries so it's not completely random. So we see that out of the 1,480 players that I looked at, 1,057 of them were from the United States. So that's about two-thirds without getting too far into the weeds in the math. So probably two-thirds of these players are going to be from the United States. And we can see that we've got some Dominican Republic, some Cuba, some Venezuela. We also know those are pretty popular. And for countries like Austria, um, I believe that one's Austria, not necessarily Australia. And for Germany, Korea, Japan, they don't happen that frequently. But you could do something similar if you decided, like, hey, I want to have a Canadian league, I want to have a South American league. You could do something like that. You can adjust these numbers, and that would affect, the nationality for these. Um, the idea I had was that if you were bored and you had two, three, four people, you could do something like yeah, like it's the DEU was kind of weird, but that helps me. Like I know with like the Olympics and stuff, it's it's odd. It's odd. So anyway, I had this idea to like um almost like if you're playing Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, like you would open up like a booster deck and then you'd pull a card and then pass the deck to the other person. So this idea of being able to draft your own team based off of like these three card packs, a red, a blue, and a yellow. But really, that didn't really come to anything, much like a lot of my ideas. But really, the bread and butter of this is this team generator, being able to, just make teams quickly. Now, I want to go to the Deadball Association, which I believe Scotch Tape has probably talked to a lot. And Scotch Tape has been a tremendous commissioner with the WDA. We've done several seasons thus far. It has been good fun. And I have to thank Scotch Tape for their inspiration. First round picks in the mail. Thank you so much. Daddy needs a new starting pitcher. Um, I do want to thank Scotch Tape, honestly, for some of the inspiration for some of the stuff I have made because he definitely provided me with some really good ideas that I sort of took and ran with. So, as you've probably noticed, I believe with some of the tournaments that we have played already have been using the WDA scorecard template. And I I made some improvements. Just a lot of these have been quality of life improvements because we started to get more interested in like pitcher stats. There were a lot of things that we wanted to track, but were manual. And uh, data entry issues like irk me. I'll put it that way. So we started to do a lot of quality of life improvements. So for example, we had a special place for the pitchers, and when you pick the pitcher, it would actually attach these pitcher codes to them. So if you're rapidly going through your bullpen, you can keep track of how many innings they pitched, how many earned runs they had, strikeouts, all that stuff. Um, this particular sheet was duplicated 3 different times for 3 different games because we played 3 game series. This stat adder, what it would do is it would actually pull these stats from the games automatically so that they could be copied and pasted in a different page that was sort of aggregating all this information. Um, Change log because I was really crappy at documenting, so this sort of forced me to do that. And as you saw, the game cast. So the game cast allowed us to stream these a little bit more, but also somebody could follow along without having to see like the big scorecard. I was inspired. Like I don't really have a good brain for like design, and I was inspired by these like massive billboards that were in the cities, like in the 20s, 30s, that type of deal. When um, really the only time you could like learn about baseball is like you'd hear it on the radio. And they had these billboards that updated with stats and stuff with like the players' names. Yes. So there was someone operating it and they were receiving Morse code to like update the game. And people would pay like a nickel or a dime to stand out like on the sidewalk or the streets or something and watch the equivalent of this billboard be updated with results of the game. And I thought that was like so unique. Like people were so locked in on baseball that this was their way of following it in the 20s and 30s. And like the boards were absolutely like beautiful. They were like so slick. And this is kind of where I got my inspiration from, was for like these game casts. And all this does is it pulls the data from the actual other spreadsheet and just updates it. Well, yeah, like to think that you're just going to stand in the street and look at a billboard for a couple hours, like it's kind of wild, but like the pictures are awesome. Like it's such a slick idea. Um, so yeah, that's what the Gamecast was. This was one of the more recent additions we made to it, and I'm very proud of how this turned out. Now, um, this isn't necessarily a spreadsheet, but um, something we were able to do with the player data is use a tool called Google Looker, and I was able to make my own version of like MLB Savant or Statcast. And what this does is I've got a helper spreadsheet that pulled all of the stats for all of the players in the WDA. So all it does is it uses a function called import range and it pulls that information. Oh yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. And it's all it does is like it's just pulling that raw data. Um, Yeah, but it's got team registry. I figured out a way to do power rankings, um, figuring out like league averages, like the lead slugging, the league OBP, league batting average, what the home edge is. So apparently in this league, you're actually at a disadvantage if you play at home. It's wonderful. Game records, all this stuff. So all of this feeds um, I love to see it. This is handled by quote simple spreadsheet. Yeah. So this feeds into Google Looker. So if you use Microsoft products, this is the equivalent of using Microsoft Excel and Power BI. which has like the weirdest pricing schema ever. But we're able to do things like, I can see who has the most home runs. And this is self-service. So, I don't have to have anything special to be able to do this. I can see who had the most stolen bases, be Olive Brunswick on the DC Grays. I can take a look and see who had the most errors. That was Dia Lambert, the Portland Stormcats. We can take a look at team batting records. We can see that the best batting average in the league was the San Juan Bandits. We can see that the best slugging was also the San Juan Bandits. We can look at some more in-depth stats. So, for example, we can look at Quick War, which is wins above replacement. Quick War is a Tom Tango kind of replacement for F War. I won't get into those calculations unless you ask nicely. But, just a quick way of seeing like, hey, who might have some of the better performances. It's a metric, do what you want with it. We look at things like OPS plus, who's getting good contact here. Trigger Carmel, for example. Doesn't matter if they're only getting 14 plate appearances, though. Let's limit this to 84 plate appearances, and we can sort this out a little bit more. Let's take a look at pitcher statistics. We can see, who has the best whip. We might need to adjust how many innings pitched, but it looks like we do have a pitcher with 38 innings pitched and a .66 whip. That's pretty darn good. We could see who's qualified for the Triple Crown. So who do we have a Triple Crown pitcher? Do we have someone that's leading in ERA, wins, and strikeouts? So this right here basically pulls that information and self-serves that. You set it up once, it auto-updates. That's the best thing about this. That's one of the best things about spreadsheets is that, like, oh, Anya Lemon Pepper, the poor girl. Robbed, I tell you, robbed. Yeah. So one of the good things about like automating a spreadsheet is like once you figure out how to do the calculations and stuff like that, it takes so much work off of you. You put in a little bit of work in the beginning, and you can get really cool results afterward. Now, after 2 seasons of the WDA, the United Baseball Alliance came into existence, and it's currently a 8-team league. In the UBA, I represent the North Myrtle Breakers. This was something I was doing a little earlier. But basically, this sheet is kind of crazy. So to give you an idea of how the UBA sheet works, we have sort of this like primary sheet that all the stats and everything kind of originate from. And then we also have our scorecard template, and I'll get into both of those. So this right here, I've created a table of contents. So all the tabs are down here, that's fine, but I've made a table of contents. You can just like make a link to a tab and make like your own little table of contents here. So like you can sort things and make it a little bit more user friendly. Now, a lot of people are already used to like the tabs at the bottom. Thank you for posting that, Zyd. I appreciate it. But yeah, there's there are some aesthetic things that you can do here. This right here is the player database. And I'm going to show you the important things here. So this player database is like the master list of all the players. Right here is their player ID. And if you've done any databasing, you know that your records need to have some type of primary key. And that is what this is. So this number right here will help us find this player, even if the player has a duplicate name, has a name change, anything like that. We have all of their stats that shouldn't change or would be like really big changes planted in here. Since we are in the steroid era, there's opportunities to overtrain and give your players traits or give them debilitating injuries, which happen more often than not with mine. And we are also able to track accolades and what our Rookie of the Year candidates are. So, we've got retirees, we've got first round draft picks. I did give an accolade for Mr. Irrelevant, who's the last one drafted. Um, and then there's some calculations here. So, if we need information about their salary, like all that stuff, if they're a fielder, pitcher, that helps a little bit later. But these are the players. This is our team database. Like I said, we have 8 teams, and this is all the information we might need for the team. And it's going to make it easier for us to reference that later with other formulas if we have it in a nice place. I will say that Google Sheets just recently implemented a an actual tables function. The nice thing about tables is you can like sort those and not break formulas, which is kind of nice. And I'll show you an example of that here in a moment. But these are our teams, and we just pulled some random information here. So in case we actually want to do something weird with the weather, you can see that Athens and North Myrtle Beach gets more rainfall than most of the other places. We can track whether they're open stadiums or domed. We can track if they're very rich or they're impoverished, like the North Myrtle Breakers. Um, we're able to track trades, the days that it happened. These with hyperlinks actually go back to the Discord chat that shows when the trade happens. So like you can have like a receipt trail if you wanted to that shows like when stuff happened. Masters of the Game does have like wealth rules. This is the equivalent of a checkbook. So we can see who bought what. Right here, for example, North Myrtle got a bonus for next season because a pitcher threw a no hitter. We're also able to track who has what bonuses and what we've purchased and everything like that. Here are our standings. North Myrtle is in the basement. In spite of everything, I just have a terrible team. That's just the way it's going to be. Um, Here's our schedule and results. This might look a little weird compared to what we've done before, but having it this format, one game per line, makes it a whole lot easier. This is closer to like a database format, makes it easier to be able to pull information if we need to. Listen, Myrtle's fine, okay? It's just really cool there. And, there are 2 places to vacation when you live in West Virginia. It's the Smoky Mountains or it's Myrtle Beach, okay? Um, so, we've got notes too. Like, I put notes that like this weekend we had like a flip-flop giveaway and fireworks. We add a little bit of flair to it. But these numbers right here are helping us keep track of all the stuff in the team database. Nope, in the standings. So, for example, runs for, runs against, even getting calculations for strength of schedule to see who's going through it. So, for example, Baltimore Bohemians have a really tough strength of schedule, which suggests why they're at the bottom of the Northern League. North Myrtle, on the other hand, does not have a strong strength of schedule. Why am I doing so poorly? This right here is going to be weird for a lot of folks because with the UBA, what we would do is we would add, if I had a player with 100 plate appearances and they got 4 additional plate appearances, we would manually add the 4 in there. So it was subject to some mathematical errors, some typing errors. Excuse me. I don't think I have any more water left. A little trickle. Let's see if it gets me through the rest of this. So, again, going back to sort of like a databasing state of mind, each player for each game has their individual stats added to this. So, for example, let me find one of my players here. John Guillotine Gibson. Week 7, game 1, he had 4 plate appearances, a home run, ribeye, and a run. That was pretty much all he did. But We've got our North Myrtle Breakers. We've got a little check mark here to show that there was activity, and it calculates a few other things like the estimated day of the game, whether they were home or away. This helps if we want to do any statistical stuff, like if you want to do fun things like, hey, does John Gibson do better at home or away? That type of deal. This also, I think what I'm using this for is to come up with ballpark factors. So right now, this list, we are about 2/3 of the way through the season. There are 2,267 entries in here. And that is how our stats are being calculated. And it helps with accuracy. This right here is our leaderboards. So with some liberal application of formulas, these update as the stats update. So with the masters of the game, these particular stats: rookie of the year, batting champ, individual home runs, individual stolen bases, the pitching award, ERA, and a strikeout leader, they all give us cash bonuses if we are at the top of the at the top of the rankings. So this helps us keep track of what's going on here. So we can take a look at our home runs, for example, and we have a 7-way tie for home run leader with 7 home runs apiece. Stolen bases, there's kind of a runaway here. Eric Hernandez up at the top. Strikeouts, Joshua Wagner and the Don Ronald Frazier, 2 Indiana Warlords players in the 60s here. I've created some indexes since our pitchers actually. I don't know. You'll have to ask. Um, oh God, I can't even think of his name. Las Vegas. It's late. I can't think of his name, but in this particular case, it's Eric Hernandez. Drowsy Pro. Thank you. I'm speaking of drowsy. Um, nah. So it's funny because the goal was to generate players with some verisimilitude and using like realistic names and stuff like that. And I'll show you how I did that. And there, it has generated some names of people that have actually existed in my life, and it's been so hilarious. This tab is called JleeBly Metrics, which is the 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 bastard child of sabermetrics. Um, but this is where all those calculations are happening. I'm currently tracking. What is this? 83 different statistics here, based off of what's being gathered from the games. Yeah, 83. What are you doing? So the thing is, though, even though this is tracking like 83 different metrics, yeah. So, but here's the thing: like this is automatically tracking like 83 different things based off of stuff that is being collected during the game, which is sort of already also being automatically collected. So that's the thing with baseball statistics. There are derived statistics and there are calculated statistics. And as long as you're able to collect the derived statistics that you need, you can calculate whatever you want to. So for example, if you notice these dark green ones, these dark green are what we're collecting from the score sheets. Okay. Plate appearances, singles, doubles, triples, home runs, walks, ribeyes, runs, stolen bases, caught stealing, ground into double play, ground into triple play, um, sack hit, sack fly errors. This is not too different from what the WDA is already collecting. From these, we're able to calculate all these light green ones. So we can calculate batting average, OBP, slugging, on OPS, extra base hits, ISO, OPS plus, WOBA, steal percentages, indices. We can generate slash lines. We take our basic statistics for the pitchers. We can get their ERA, their WHIP, their K9, their BB9, their K over BB, their batting average against, their OBP against. the percentage of times they're striking out or getting walks or ground balls or fly balls, their ERA plus, all of this stuff. A lot of those 83 make like no sense unless they're used elsewhere. But that's the thing. Like, this is not something that has to be done manually. Like, we are collecting a lot of these derived statistics already in the course of play, and they're being calculated in this sheet for our enjoyment or lack thereof if you're not much of a mathematics person. I'll show you the North Myrtle sheet right here. This is a table. I can sort this and it not break anything. So I can sort by first name, if that's helpful. I can sort by jersey number. I can sort by OBT, which might be helpful if I'm trying to figure out who might be best to put in my lineup. I can sort by what city they're from. But probably most helpful for me is sorting by their lineup order. All this is, and it doesn't really get used that much, is kind of shows a breakdown of like what your lineup looks like. There's some utilities that doesn't really help. This result checklist helps us keep track of who's put their stats in or not. So if we're missing any data, we can do that. Can you show how well you've batted in different parts of the lineup? That is a negative. You would have to be able to put more information in to be able to collect that. So, like, that would be something that you would have to collect, is the thing. If it's something you are interested in, you could absolutely do that, but it's something you have to collect. So this right here helps us keep track of who put their stats in. Salary amortization helps us keep track of who is over or under salary, since we are playing with salary rules. Park factors is something fun that I wanted to look at. We all pretty much have the same park, but it's kind of interesting to see what's happening more frequently at parks. So, for example, Innovan Janice River Ballpark has the highest hard hit. So, hard hit balls are happening like 18% more than any other ballpark. Um, More contacts being made at Barefoot Landing Park than any of the other places. Um, Triples are happening more often at the Athens Bullpups. Um, Seneca Rush's stadium, as well as the St. Louis Sluggers, have the highest percentage of home runs. So these things right here, even though it's all random, they help build a fiction about these stadiums that we didn't already have. So you can build this fiction about Innovan Janice River Ballpark and the Gateway Dome having these short porches that allow for more home runs, whereas you have these other stadiums like Baltimore Memorial Stadium and the Athens Bullpups, where home runs aren't getting nearly as much. Um, One of my favorites, and I keep ragging them over it, is how the Baltimore Bohemians there is a 79% higher chance of getting an error at Memorial Stadium. So it's basically just like a pockmarked mess. That's one of my favorite ones. Smarmy, I see you've put a couple questions. Could you theoretically look at the data created by a player and determine there are too many outliers if someone is skewing numbers? You absolutely could. I will say that Google Sheets is probably not the best software to do that type of data analysis. But I mean, you could do some basic graphing and try to plot a line. Um, there have been some statistical things that I have wanted to do and would have liked to have done, and it just like I just can't replicate it in Google Sheets versus what I can do in Microsoft Excel. Um, this right here is taking data from the player database and telling us who's going to be a free agent next year. This here is a tool that allows us to look at to generate names. So this right here is a first name generator. What I did was I took a look at census information and basically pulled the top 200 names for babies in the 1970s who would theoretically be of baseball playing age in the 90s. and also based off of how often that name comes up. So, for example, Michael was the most popular first name. Jennifer was the most popular first name for women. So, as you can see, you will probably get some Michaels in here. Here's some Josephs back to back, some Jasons, but there is the possibility of some less common names appearing, and you can bake these into here as well. So, you could create your own pool. Last name, same type of deal. This comes from census information. This is the 2,000 most common surnames in the United States, and this allows us to generate a random list so we can quickly create new players with some names that still allow some versatility to what we're trying to achieve in the league. This right here is a player forge. This allows us, this is very similar to the thing that I showed very first. This is going to allow us to generate stats very quickly for brand new players if we need to. We were using this for our drafting, and then I've been trying something here to determine like home edge and power rankings and that type of deal. So, for example, you can see North Myrtle is like pretty pitiful. New England Senators are one of the strongest teams in the league. Now, I want to show you what our scorecard can do real quick. So, my goal was to try to make this as easy as possible for the players or the managers, for more accurately, and get us into game time quicker so that we are not doing clerical stuff, we are actually playing. So, our scorecard, last time I updated this was November 30th, and there's a few things I still need to do, but I'm like just too damn lazy. This right here uses an import range function to pull the roster from every single team as it appears in our individual sheet, which means that I do not have to go to this UBA sheet to get my roster. It is already baked into this one and updates automatically. What I would do is I would copy my information and I would set up the series. So I could set up the home team, I could set up the away team, and I've got step-by-steps here to walk you through how to do that. We have our 3 games here. I'm going to collapse things a little bit, and actually I'm going to drop the size just to make this a little bit easier to follow. But this, in spite of its looks, is almost identical to what Scotch Tape's sheet was kind of doing. We still have our codes in here so we can track what type of results we have. We still have to manually track stolen bases, errors, and there's also the opportunity to adjust the earned runs in the event someone comes across as a result of an error and it's not really earned for the pitcher, so you don't want to penalize them. But also there's these drop downs where we can pick the team and it will update the information for that team to make it a little bit easier. It will generate the statistics that can be copied and pasted directly into the stat input. So all someone has to do is once the game is over, copy their stuff, paste it into a sheet. Don't have to do any math or anything like that. This also has a game cast as well. I wish that would update. I can show you the utilities, but I have updated this a little bit so that it actually shows a baseball diamond. What this does is it pulls. There are 8 different states that the bases can be in, like bases empty, first base only, second base only, third base only. So this is literally just 8 different pictures. It looks at what the base status is and it pulls the right picture. And what it looks like is something similar to what you would see on like Fox Sports or something like that. Um, that was old stuff. That's also old stuff. But here's the change log with this. So that's how this works. So my goal has been to try to make this as easy as possible for folks to be able to do what they want to do. Um, Last thing I wanted to show off, and this has nothing to do with spreadsheets, but kind of has something to do with spreadsheets, is a supplement that I wrote called Going Yard, a dead ball baseball with dice supplement written by myself. Um, I'm going to copy that link and mess up by hitting Control C instead of Control V. And this right here is just a little cool supplement. It has no mechanical bearing on the game at all. None. What it does, however, is it allows you to add a little bit of flavor to whenever you hit a home run. Where did it go? How far did you hit it? So there's several different methods here, talking about like home runs. You can roll a D100 and figure out how far it went. You can use your hit table, like what your hit table result was, and figure it out from there. What do critical hits do? Um, Park factors and stuff like that if you're doing it. But no, this was a fun little project, and a lot of it had to do with, being able to look at some of the histograms and stuff to figure out, um, you know, how far were these balls being hit. So this was more of like a statistical thing. Um, so I've talked for a while and probably ate into some of the Q&A portion there. I'm going to take a look at the Q&As that have been posted so far. If some of the moderators can help me keep track of what questions have been asked as I've been talking. So some of the questions that came in from before are, I talked about what got me interested in spreadsheets. What caused me to first attempt to make such complex sheets? And really, it's just been, it's insidious is what happens, is the more you learn, the better you kind of get at it. And I never really set out to create something complex. It's just you start to learn particular skills and they don't feel complex. They're just they're just tools. And you learn how to use new tools, new tools, new tools. And the more you learn, like the more tools you have, the more complex things you can do. They really don't feel complex though. I know that might sound weird, but like you start from somewhere, you work your way up. Um, all big projects are just a bunch of little projects combined, pretty much. Um, What advanced stats are most important to track for personal league use? This is 100% personal preference. What you will find is that a lot of people who enjoy baseball, the Venn diagram with statistics nerds is a pretty big overlap. Some people do not care about any of that stuff. They want to watch the game. They are content with basic stats and the eyeball test for figuring out like who's the best player. Some people love numbers. I have a borderline addiction to numbers. Um, I like being able to quantify things. It makes me feel comfortable. I'm interested in all these things. So um, when you see me kind of get like obsessive with things and you have like the 83 different statistics up there, sometimes it's just because I'm trying to learn and push myself to see if it's something I can do. And they might be relevant, they might be important, they might not be, but I can assure you that I personally probably learned something from it. And if someone else can get benefit from it, then that's also pretty cool. What is my preferred program for spreadsheets? Um, my preferred program for spreadsheets is always going to be Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel has some additional functions that just cannot be replicated yet in Google Sheets. When I am at work, I use Excel almost all the time for personal projects. And on rare occasion, I will use Google Sheets on stuff that needs to be collaborated with. There are a few things that Google Sheets can do better. Google Sheets is better for collaboration, in my opinion. Google Sheets, the price is right. So it can do a lot of the things that Microsoft Excel can, for a much better price. Um, so my goal is always to be, if I'm going to develop something, to try to develop it in Google Sheets, because I don't want there to be like $120 a year like entry fee to be able to use something that I make. Yes, I prefer Excel, but again, this is just another challenge. How can I do it in Sheets, something that I could normally do in Excel? Um, let's see here. I'm looking at some of the QAs here, and I'm trying to figure out if it's relevant to me. Um, really, really good players who are super cheap or really bad but super expensive. So Smarmy has asked a question in Q's for A's. With Roki Sasaki signing with the Dodgers, how might you account for outliers such as Roki when trying to come up with functions for team building, namely really, really good players that are super cheap or really bad but super expensive? Within Deadball, when you're determining salaries and stuff, there is an optional rule that lets you kind of add like plus or minus 10% to their contract. Another thing that's kind of happening that we have seen in the UBA is that young players that are on a contract minimum are currently like $200,000 a year players. But as soon as they get their big boy contract, they're going to be like multiple million. So we are trying to get as much play out of them as possible. And some of the teams like mine with a really low budget are going to lose those players. So we're going to have young rosters and generate talent that way. Um, but it's interesting if you actually do start playing with the Masters of the Games rules. You will find that some of these things kind of come up, especially if you have a very tight budget. Smarmy also asks, how hard would it be to automate an entire season of Deadball? Is it possible? Um, is it possible? Probably. I'm not sure I'm the right person for the job. Um, the you start to get into some complexities. Like I think you could probably I've made a tool with Excel, and I kind of had to use Excel for it to simulate like a whole season of stats for a team based off some assumptions. So, like, based off the assumption of a number of games played and how many, like, the stamina of players, how often they're playing, how often the bench is playing, um, all that stuff. You can get stats that way that don't require actually playing any games. I know there are folks that have made tools that have used like Python, that have used Google Sheets, that will help generate full games. Um, it's it would take some work, and it really depends on what you're looking for too. Like, does it add value? Is it helpful to you? Is that something that, brings you happiness or fixes a problem you have? Um, maybe. I don't know. Those are questions that, like, you might have to ask yourself. I'm coming back to con stage here. Nothing has been asked on the con stage, but I would like to just, I'm here for another 6 or 7 minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, any um, like burning questions you might have about Excel or Google Sheets or any formulas or anything like that. Happy to answer them. Smarmy's typing. How would you recommend people begin when trying to learn how to alter pre-existing or creating their own sheets? Okay. Um, those are two very different worlds. Um, The problem with altering pre-existing sheets is that if you do not know how the sheet was made, you run the risk of breaking something every single time you make a change. That's just how it is. If you have a good grasp of the formulas and stuff, like, Control Z exists, to hitting undo exists. But if you're looking at a pre-existing sheet, like, make a copy of it, take a look at some of the formulas, you know, look into it and see what type of crazy thing or crazy solutions they have. Um, are you referencing other materials? Is everything baked into the individual formula? Like, there's some, I'm going to show you a crazy one. I'm going to show you a crazy formula. This formula right here generates a stat line. Okay. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is a ton of crap going on in this formula to generate a stat line. So if you have appreciated when we had our tournament games earlier on, when you looked at the game cast and it said like 1 for 2 um, with a double and all that stuff, that right here comes from this formula. Okay. Um, but this formula is a series of smaller formulas. Okay. I'm going to show you a trick. There is a very popular formula called concatenate. All concatenate does is it jams a bunch of smaller things together. And there are 3 different ways you can use concatenate. There is a concatenate function that you can put multiple entries in, and it jams them together. There's one function called concat, and it only does 2. Or you can use the ampersand. It does the same thing as the concatenate function. If we take a look at this massive formula here, right here is a concatenate that breaks up to, I mean, like here's an ampersand, 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 here's an ampersand. Like, there's a bunch of those. This is probably like a dozen or so smaller formulas jammed into one to give us what we would consider like our stat line. Anyway, there are a few more questions. Let me see if I can get to them. Drowsy on Pacific Coast here. Any recommendations for YouTube playlists, free online courses, tutorials that'll make me become an Excel sheets mastermind, such as yourself? So, as I said before, Google is going to be your best friend. Like, what the way I learned a lot of stuff is that I had a problem, I looked for an answer, and Google kind of helped me out. I am going to recommend one YouTuber. Her name is Layla Gurani. So Layla Gurani is a like Microsoft MVP. She has her own courses that I have purchased for work related to learn more on a Power Query and Power BI. And on occasion, she just has like these how to's and stuff about particular formulas and everything. Um, Her videos are between 5 and 10 minutes. They're quick, they're to the point. Um, but yeah, if you just kind of like add her, like subscribe to her, and then every week or so, like, you might get a short or anything like that. You might be able to learn some additional stuff. Like, but this is one that I would recommend. Fun fact, I'm pretty sure she's based out of Austria as well. Um, da-da-da-da-da. Could the detail of the UBA sheet be replicated with the WDA, or is that league too big? No, I don't know. I don't think that the league is too big. It's a matter of um, you just have to format the data, right? Like the UBA could be 30, 60, 100 teams. Like it could legit be like any of those. Um, you could have as many players, anything like that. Really, the limitation is how much Google Sheets is going to limit you to, because Google Sheets limits you to, I think it's 1 million cells per table. So you take your number of rows times your number of columns. That became an issue with our with this right here, our UBA stat input. I determined that you could do this with a whole season of MLB. No, 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 no. I did not use 1 million lines. Um, I'm saying that Google Sheets has a hard limit of 1 million cells, which means we could do. So this goes to AK. So that's uh, this is 31 rows across. So a million divided by 31 is the number of rows we could have, and that's roughly like a whole MLB season worth. So we're fine. But to answer your question about UBA, like, yeah, so if you take your 162 games times 30 teams times 20, players, give or take, you you can fit it. So there's not much like danger there. But yeah, like it could be done. Um, it's just a matter of that if that's the direction you want to go with it. And some of the stuff I did here was kind of learning like, oh, we can do tables. That makes things like way easier. All right. It is 10:02 and I want to be respectful of the next presenter's time. I want to thank everyone for attending. We had about we've got 12 in here right now, and I don't think that includes me or Scotch Tape. So there's 14 people in here, which is really cool for a Friday evening or night if you're cause right now. So I want to thank everyone for turning out. Yeah, we had more in there. I probably scared them or bored them off, but I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up and for. I hope you've been enjoying the programming so far for DeadballCon. Um, if you have any questions after this, and you may, you can use the Q's for A's. You can drop me a DM. You can drop anything like in one of the channels or whatever. I will do my best to answer them, but I will say that we have some pretty talented individuals in this community. I just happened to be the one that was selected to do this presentation. So, with that, I want to thank everyone, wish everyone a good evening, and I will cede my time to the next presenter. Thank you.